You're listening to Beyond the Campaign, and this is episode number 8. Welcome to Beyond the Campaign. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, podcast publicist, author, and host of this show and Read the Damn Book. Here, you're going to learn from political candidates and from politicians. We're not just going to talk about the issues. We're going to talk about the human beings who are investing themselves in us so that we can invest ourselves in them. This is Beyond the Campaign. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and today I'm bringing you another California candidate. I am speaking with Nichelle Henderson, who is running for Superintendent of Education for the state of California. Education is so important, especially as a parent. I am looking very closely at what's going on with the Department of Education on a federal level, as well as what's going on a state level, a local level, all the way down to our PTA, which I am on the board of. I think that we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we protect our children, their education, the financial risks that we're all seeing. So this is a very important conversation, and I encourage you to get involved at a local level and to ensure that you know who's running for Superintendent of Education for California. Hello, Nichelle.
Hello.
I love that we are one letter off.
Right? We're the same person.
Yes, we are. I love it. Can you introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Nichelle Henderson. I am a trustee on the Los Angeles Community College District Board, immediate past president, and I am a candidate for State Superintendent of Public Instruction.
And we need help with our
Yep, we
schools right
do.
now. With what we have going on with the Board of Education and whether it exists or doesn't exist and what they're trying to take from us. I always tell people I think that California, we're really lucky if you live in California because we already have things in place to help protect us, but the money needs to stay here. And it's just such a hot mess. Like people look down on us for giving our children free breakfast and lunch. And yet I think that's a wonderful thing.
It's the thing that we should be doing.
Yeah, keep the children fed, keep them educated, keep them healthy, basic life things. But
How do they learn if they're thinking of, if all they hear is their stomach growling?
yes, I had Dr. Terrence Lester on a couple weeks ago on my other podcast, and we were talking about the same thing, especially when it comes to children who are unhoused. Like, how do you expect? It's amazing to me that a child who is unhoused still shows up for school, still is trying to be educated. Their parents are sending them, and yet we're concerned about them not being fed while they don't even have a roof over their heads.
Right. Right. They literally don't know where they're going to sleep that night, and they're still coming to school every day, being engaged and able to envision their future. That's amazing to me. That's resilience.
And so what brings you to where we are today? Why are you running for this position? It's an important one. So I want to know what is driving you to do this?
What is driving me to do this is I'm a former middle school teacher. I taught sixth grade, and the challenges that I experienced, that I dealt with as a classroom teacher, teachers in the classroom today are still dealing with it. The reason that I know is because in my day job, I teach and support new and pre-service teachers working towards their teaching credentials. They're working to work in our K-12 schools, specifically our elementary schools. And I'm seeing that they're being forced to jump through these hoops to become teachers. And once they do this, they're not supported. They're not encouraged to stay in the profession. So we wonder why we have a teaching shortage. We make it difficult for people to be teachers, and we make it difficult for them to want to continue in the profession. And because of my academic background, my professional experience, I feel that I am the person to help envision and reimagine what our system of education looks like to make it better for all of us.
And so what is the superintendent's overall job? I recently interviewed 2 of the candidates for lieutenant governor because I'm like, well, you're like the vice president of the state. What exactly is it that you do? Because
And
I
you
think
don't
many
do vice
constituents
president
have no
stuff at
idea.
all. So the
right.
Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state of California oversees public instruction for K-12, not community college, not adult ed, but they oversee how K-12 instruction intersects with adult ed and community college. So the superintendent does not have the power to dictate to school districts what they should and shouldn't do because of local control. But what the superintendent does do and can do is advocate for educational funding. Is when legislation is passed and policy is set at the state level by the governor, is to understand that language that needs to be inserted, that the how of the implementation and the why and when versus just the we need to pass this legislation to get this done and not really understand what it actually looks like for boots on the ground to implement it and make sure it happens. And so, although there isn't necessarily a lot of authority attached to the position, there is a lot of opportunity to advocate and make sure that the work gets done by the person that has a background and understands why it's essential.
Where do things come into play when we talk about like the Board of Education and what we're seeing right now with this administration, all the way down to the local level, the PTAs that are helping fund where there's a lack of funding? I know that our school, it baffled me. I'm on the PTA, and so I know what numbers there are where we're raising $250,000 to help fund arts and music and recreation, in addition to field trips and other things. Where does the superintendent come into play when we talk about the local level versus this national level?
Locally, because of local control, the superintendent would work with the superintendents of school districts and school boards to make sure that they have plans for how they allocate their funds. We're talking about cuts from the federal government, but essentially, our school districts have funding that they get from the state and the federal government to, I guess you could say, handle their business. The idea is some of these earmarks or community grant funding or community project funding that comes from our federal legislators, that is one-time money that some districts have been living off of because their representative has been able to get them subsequent money or get them money for other programming. And they're looking at through the lens of, I can only do these programs if I have this money. And then you start these programs and the funding stops. How do you continue to support students and make sure that that the work of these programs continues? And that comes with a plan. That means that you are identifying what your priorities are and making sure that your funding is aligned. Helping school districts interact more efficiently and effectively with their PTAs and their school site councils. Encouraging parents to really be involved and engaged, understand what it means to be part of the PTA, and understand what it means to be part of a school site council. School site councils work directly with the site principals in setting the budget, determining how many teachers we can pay for next year. How many instructional assistants we
Yeah.
can pay for. Why is that important? Special needs students have instructional assistants that work with the teachers. If we don't make sure we have a sufficient number, we're not providing support for our teachers. So on the local level, it's that boots on the ground, really understanding what implementation looks like.
You're giving us an education that I think many probably aren't aware of. So I love it and appreciate it. Let's talk about you. What made you want to be a teacher? I remember when I was a child, I was like, oh, I want to be a teacher when I grow up. And then I was like, no, absolutely not. And now that I'm a parent, there is no way that
You
I
know for
would
sure you made the
voluntarily.
right
Yeah.
decision. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not want to be a teacher. I mean, I didn't think about it as a kid, and I always look back at my life now as a woman approaching retirement age, that all of you get this little voice in your head that says, "Oh, you should do X." And then you think, no, absolutely not. And for me, it was being a teacher because all I could think about in my life was teachers don't make any money. It can't be fun. Life happens. I started volunteering in my kids' class when they were in preschool. And then I became a teacher's aide and I started working in the classroom with teachers. And I thought, oh my gosh, I love this. I absolutely love this. And teaching is that profession that when you are in the midst of it, you do not feel as though you are working. You're doing what you love. There is not a day that you don't want to do it. And every day that you're doing it, you feel better about it, right? It is a confirmation for you as to why. I absolutely love it. I'm doing my dream job right now, working with teachers that are working towards their teaching credentials because I am building teachers. I am providing support and educating folks that are going to be doing what I was doing. And I want them to do it with the same passion and love and confidence that I did it with. And that is why I teach. So even in my campaign, I know that the average voter, even, legislators, people that make decisions about how the superintendent actually does their work, don't understand what this work is. And so it is incumbent upon me, and because I love teaching, to make sure that people understand that you really understand what this role is and what it is not. Because understanding what it is not helps you keep your expectations in check. But it also helps you work better with the person that becomes the superintendent because you know what they are able to do, and it allows you to be able to advocate better for yourself in a sense because now you know who you're talking to in terms of talking to someone that can do a particular thing versus helping you do that thing. And with dealing with local control with our school districts, it isn't the superintendent doing it, it's the superintendent empowering school districts to get the outcomes that they desire.
In working with these future teachers, do you see or hear like the concern in them, whether it's around the shortage, the salaries, what's happening with the Department of Education? Is this becoming more and more prevalent in them questioning, is this the career path that I really should be going down?
They don't question so much the career path, they question the career outcomes. I'm preparing to be a teacher, but will I be able to be a teacher? Once I
Mm.
become a teacher, how long will I be able to be a teacher before there's no funding? And that's a real concern, And so as a teacher educator, I help them navigate that space. We do not have enough teachers in our classrooms, which is the reason why our classes are oversized. No teacher should be teaching more than 25 students. I think 20 is a sweet spot. We've got teachers teaching upwards of 32 students, but we wonder why our outcomes are the way that they are. We have candidates in this race that are coming from the state legislature that are talking about how they, when they were in the legislature or currently in the legislature, um, push legislation and funding. But they don't understand that that's irrelevant now because as the superintendent of public instruction, they will be now responsible for the implementation of that legislation, the allocation of those fundings, helping schools determine how that funding should be utilized. So you go from this place this space on a macro level where you are dictating what people should be doing in a utopian society to now understanding real world scenarios, why it isn't functioning like that. And it's really important, again, this is a constitutional office of one of 9 where the person in the seat should have some lived experience. I've been a classroom teacher. I know I can tell you the challenges that classroom teachers are facing, but I can also say to you in any given situation, give you at least 3 things that can be done to correct it and make it better for teachers, thus making it better for students, where I don't need to speak in hypotheticals. I don't need to refer back to a time that I made it possible for someone to do something. I can speak on what I can do because I understand what this role isn't and what it is. And so when I'm working with my teacher candidates, I'm helping them to address fear and concern of the future, but also helping them to understand how, when they do become credentialed teachers, how they navigate with all of the challenges that we're addressing right now, but also the challenges that we could be addressing 6 months or 2 years down the line.
I love this. I love that you have the experience, the background, the knowledge, and you're bringing it to this is what we need more in politics. We need people who are not career politicians who just slide into a position that they're not qualified for. And so I love that you're coming with this experience. You mentioned that you are a near retirement aged woman. Why run for public office? Why now? What is your thought of, you know what, I'm not going to retire. I'm just going to go and run for office instead, because that sounds like a barrel of fun.
Well, because I sit on a community college board and I see the limitations. I see the limitations coming from the state legislature and the legislation. I see, I guess, on my board specifically, and I see this across the country, if the legislation isn't specific in terms of what you should be doing and what the expected outcomes are, there are folks that sit on boards that will say, well, they didn't say we had to do that. So let's just wait. But we know that is something that needs to happen. And so just that, having that understanding of that nuance in the language of the legislation that says you should be doing this, these are the outcomes that we're looking for, and there should be a plan, and highlight who should be overseeing, who should be those folks that are working to implement this plan. This is a perfect opportunity, friends, to bring all of your stakeholders together. Talk to your parents, talk to students. I've been talking to a lot of high school students. They have opinions. They have opinions. And I think it is absolutely wonderful because they are asking the hard questions because they are most directly impacted by the decisions that we're making. I will be 60 years old in 3 years. I don't want to be 85 running for office. I don't want to be 85 asking folks to vote for me. I want to do this. I want to make some significant change in this role, and I want to step aside for someone else to continue the implementation and come in with some really great ideas. But I see in this field that I am the only candidate that really has this background to really make a dent. Because what we need to do in education is snatch all of the Band-Aids off and start to let the wounds heal. And that healing involves being intentional, thinking about how we reimagine. This is an opportunity to reimagine the future of education. What do we want it to look like versus what it looks like currently? And I want to bring people
That is such a
together
great
to
point.
have those conversations.
Our school district, I'm in San Jose Unified School District, and they just announced they're putting together a committee to imagine what the dream schools would look like. How many teachers would we have? What would the classes look like? Sizes, aides, special needs, all of that. They just announced it in the last week. So we do need to do that. And I think that COVID really played a big
Oh, it
part in all of
definitely
this.
did.
And you mentioned high school students, they've lived through this. I mean, my oldest was in kindergarten going to Zoom classes, and it's, to me, it's kind of amazing that we're like, yeah, we did that and here we are moving on. Like,
Right. We didn't take
there's
any
still
learnings from that.
ramifications. No.
As we deal with this immigration issue, we have students that are not attending school. How do we educate these kids? Do we allow them to just sit at home? We went through several years of a pandemic where students were learning online. Well, now we understand how to offer hybrid classes where the child can be on Zoom in real time with their class so that they can be engaged. so that they don't miss anything. We talk a lot about learning loss from the pandemic. I don't believe that learning loss is a thing. If you learned it, you never lose it. That's why we say um, that your education is something that no one can take away from you. Because once you've been
Hmm.
educated and you know something, you know it. And so for our kids, they're experiencing gaps in their learning that haven't been corrected. So when we talk about the achievement gaps, it is because students have gaps in their learning, gaps in their understanding. As we reimagine education, how do we close those gaps for each individual student so that we close the gap across the state? That is what
Do
happens when
you
you reimagine education.
Do you think that we have lowered the standards when it comes to education? And I ask this because I know that our test scores all just came out and things are worse than they thought they would be. I see the different ways, Common Core. I think any parent who's listening would be like, I hate Common Core. I'm like, this is learning math all over again for me in doing this homework. And I get it, but memorization was the thing, of our days. And
Right.
that's just how we did it. And I understand that Common Core is so we can have other types of learning and whatnot. But are the standards lowered so that we do have all of our children get through high school, do you think?
I don't think that the standards have been lowered. I think that Common Core standards is a Band-Aid. We had standards that work perfectly well. Common Core standards is a Band-Aid for a larger problem. The Common Core standards was this idea that now we're all going to focus on specific standards in a specific way, where we could have simply said, here are our state standards, and this is how we're going to implement them. And so I don't feel that there are our standards across the board have been lowered, but we have a system of social promotion. Standards need to be assessed. The reason that you assess is because you want to determine a child's or a teacher's mastery of those standards. Where are they? What did they learn? If they're showing us what they've learned and we're still allowing them to matriculate next to the next grade, what are we telling them? So we're saying we're data-driven schools and everything is data-driven, but we're collecting this data and we're clearly not using it. First of all, we test too often and we test with the wrong focus and intention. We've made standardized testing far too high stakes. We need to allow classroom teachers the time to teach the content so that our students can demonstrate their understanding of it. And what does that look like? In 2004, when I was completing my teaching credential, one of the activities that I did in my program was to create a year-long lesson plan. So from September to June, using the framework that my district provided. If I'd used the framework that my district provided, I would have still been teaching the content the following November. So I would start the school year in September, but I wouldn't have finished it until the following fall in November. We are starting a school year in September and August, assessing students in April on that grade level content. Students haven't learned it. The teacher has not had an opportunity to, one, teach all of the standards that students need to demonstrate mastery of, but they also haven't had an opportunity to really determine how they've learned it, what more they may need to do. And so I want in reimagining education, I want to reimagine it what assessments look like across the board. How do we
Hmm.
allow teachers to assess students in a way consistently that allows them to see where their students are, but also gives them the time and the latitude to help them really master the standard. So when we are allowing a third grader to go to the fourth grade without knowing that they do not know how to read, we can explain why. Because right now we cannot explain why we're allowing that to happen. Why did we
Right.
eliminate graduations? Now you have a child that is not motivated because they're not learning. they're demonstrating to the teacher that they don't get it. The teacher isn't able to support that learning, but yet they're moving on to the next grade level. So we currently have a generation of students in school that have learned virtually. They've learned remotely. They didn't have a lot of direct interaction with their classmates, with their teacher. But their parents were that generation of students that were left behind during in the mid 1990s, during this No Child Left Behind, all children will read ideology. And since that time, children have just been falling through the cracks, and the cracks are getting larger and larger and larger. So when we say we need to do better, what does doing better look like for our students? But standardized testing is the bane of my existence. And as a classroom teacher, explaining to parents why I know their child isn't going to do well on this test. Knowing that I'm looking in the eyes of these young adults that are not going to perform well on this test simply because this test was not designed for their success.
Right. I completely get that. I'm the parent who goes to the teacher at the beginning of the year and says, look, here's where we're going to fall short. I'm just going to tell you right now. We know exactly where we are when it comes to math, when it comes to reading. This is what we're doing at home. This year it was, okay, well, we'll give it a month. And a month later we met and you
We're
were
still in
right.
the
I said,
same
I
place.
know I'm right.
Right. And
I know exactly where we are.
With reimagining education, you as a parent going in to talk to your child's teacher, you are their first teacher. You know where your child's motivation for school. You know your child's interest level. That you and that teacher should be able to develop a plan for your child, where the teacher is able to teach and give your child what they need, but give you the tools to help your child, not you having to try and figure out what that looks like at home. And that is what we don't allow teachers to do. And teachers want to do this. They are not given the time in their classes to do it effectively.
I wholeheartedly agree. It's been our exact experience. I have begged, please give me extra work. We will do it at home. No, I don't have time to do it, but we will do it. And I know it will make a difference. And instead, I've been stuck creating things and figuring it out on our own.
That isn't your job as a teacher. Your job as a parent. Your job as a parent is to support your child in their learning and support the teacher who is able to give you the tools that you need to help your child. The teacher should be helping you, guiding you through this lane of advocacy and support for your child, not you and the teacher feeling frustrated as to how we're going to help your child succeed. And that's what we're dealing with right now.
It's a good time.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It's a good time to be a parent and a teacher, right?
And it's really, a sad situation, because when I started in my career in education, my now 34-year-old child was 3.5. And he now has a 5-year-old daughter. And we're having these conversations. Why? Why are we having these conversations? We've had generations of folks go through our system of education. And the reason why is because our system of education was not designed for every student to be successful. And because of that, we have students that it was intended or expected for them to fall through the cracks. I think that original intention was not that so many students would fall through the cracks and the ways that they're falling through the cracks. So again, we need to rip Band-Aids off of this broken, this system that wasn't intended for all of us to be successful, and make appropriate corrections in the system to set a new foundation.
I love this. I would ask you, what do you hope once you're elected? But I think we've all gotten what you hope to accomplish once you're elected, and to rip these Band-Aids off, to make it better. Yes, you have my vote.
And the superintendent does have the latitude to do a lot of these things. The superintendent sits on the UC Board of Regents, the CSU Board of Trustees, the Commission for Teacher Credentialing in the state of California. Areas that set the tone for how our students are functioning. Our teachers are able to do their work. Every teacher's work condition is the student's learning condition. If we don't make it right
Mm.
for the teacher, how are we making it right for the student? And if the child is not functioning in the classroom, how does that impact parents? You want the best for your child, and you see your child isn't getting the best. But it isn't always the teacher's fault. The
Right.
teacher can only work within the conditions that they are provided. The administrators are only working within the conditions that they are provided. And so when we reimagine education and we are intentional about who we're focused on and what we're focused on, which should be student success, we can have the wildest imaginings and see them become reality, because we're going to all work together to make sure that this happens. And I believe
Oh,
that
I
we
love
can.
this.
I believe that we can. I
I hope
don't,
we can.
you know, I know that it sounds crazy because we've been dealing with this idiotic system, but when we all come to the table, when we bring our voice to the table and we talk about our needs, we talk about what our expectations should be, we then start to imagine the change, because now we're setting plans in place.
Mm.
Now we are working with intention. We're saying to administrators, we are going to give you enough time to visit classrooms so that you can observe teachers and see where there may be areas of growth, but equip you with the tools to support them, not make them feel worse because they're struggling. Understand that this system is set up for them to struggle in a way that isn't beneficial to them or their student. Now, administrator, you are going to be allowed the time to support that teacher better, because you know that in supporting that teacher better, she or he is going to get more out of their students.
Mm.
That's what
You're
I want to see.
amazing.
I want to see student
I
success
want to
on
see
a
it
level like
too.
we've never seen it before. And when we talk about literacy, literacy just isn't reading. Literacy is writing, speaking, listening across all content areas. How do you do that in math? How do you do that in science? How do we equip teachers so that they make students want to learn? Where you constantly see the light bulb going off and kids are excited. They're saying, I want to be a scientist. I want to study this because I learned about that. Or this person came to my class and talked to me about X. Mom, dad, grandma, did you know? I want that.
Yeah.
I want everybody to be enthused. I want teachers to want to get up at 5:30 in the morning to be at work at 7:30, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and their students coming to the class. What are we learning today? This is what my interest is. That's what I want to see. And I know that we can get there. It won't be tomorrow, but I know that we can get there, because together we understand that with a plan for allowing space for that, we can see it. We can see it become reality.
I love that. And as parents, we should all want the same thing. I want my kids to be excited to go to school and to come home and not moan and complain about homework, but say, yeah, we're going to do
Exactly.
it. And it was great. And I learned this today. Yes, I
Homework
love this. I am
homework
so
to me,
excited.
homework is I know this isn't a popular thought for many, but homework is ridiculous. Homework should be practice at home for what you did in school. If you didn't learn it in school, homework becomes a frustration. Students should understand it well enough so that when they come home, they can explain what they're doing to their parent. Homework should, when I gave homework as a sixth grade teacher, I would tell my parents, from the time that their child put their name on their paper and started their work, if it takes more than 15 minutes, stop it. They're coming to school tomorrow and we're going to work on it. It should not be a frustration. It should not take your child 2 hours to do their homework.
Hmm.
It should not, because when the kid gets home, you've got family time.
Yeah.
You've got
Yeah. Our
bedtime.
kids
Kids
are
should not be
overloaded
staying up
too.
and yes. Why are we doing that? If we
Sports
allow
and
teachers,
extracurriculars.
if we allow teachers time enough in class, instructional time actually utilized for instructional time in class, They can teach everything that that child needs to know around that skill set, so that when they get home, they're practicing and they feel good about it because they found some success in school.
Mm-hmm.
Teach it, and
Oh, I can't wait for you to get elected.
I can't wait either because I can see it, I can touch it. And I know teachers want this. I know that teachers want it because I wanted it as a teacher. And I know teachers need it because I needed it as a teacher. The idea is, how do we make it happen? And it isn't going to happen because someone says to you, when I was in the legislature, I put money towards this.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be able to say, I put money towards this, and now I'm going to help make sure that this funding is allocated appropriately. I'm going to help you devise a plan where we make sure that we utilize this money the way that I intended it when I was in the state legislature. And a candidate should be able to tell you enough about the role of superintendent that they can articulate what they will do in this role, not just tell you what should be done by some, magical being in the classroom or in the state superintendent's office. It's really
Mm-hmm.
important to really have an idea of how you will support folks, because again, because of local control, the superintendent cannot go to the school and tell the superintendent and the school board, you better do this. It's, what are you doing? What are your needs? How can I help you make sure that you are able to see the outcomes that we all want to see? How can I be of support? Or, I see that this is the intended outcome and we're not meeting these outcomes. How can I support you in making sure that you do this, that this gets done, that your students are able to experience this success, but you are able to brag about it? We shouldn't be embarrassed about being so low on the totem pole as the fourth largest economy in the world. Why are our children not reading?
Mm-hmm.
Why do they not like math? Clearly, utilizing math and science and social studies and being able to read are important, and people are using these tools to be successful in their lives, to build our economy. Why are we not making sure that our children are able to see themselves in the world economy through the lens of education?
Yes. Nichelle, how do we support you to make this happen?
Woo! If you are able, contribute $5, $10 to the campaign. This is truly a grassroots campaign. I have kind of sworn off lots of different types of money that has commas and zeros attached on checks. And so what I'm really relying on is parents, students, teachers, administrators, people that care about education and agree with me that if we come together with our hearts and intention, we can see a better outcome for our state of education. Host a meet and greet, virtually or in person, in your area. I have embarked upon a 58 county tour where it is my intention to get to all 58 counties and introduce myself to people, educate them on the role of the superintendent and how they can support my campaign. This is really important to me. Building relationships is what is going to get me this win. People being able to, like you, Michelle, being able to say, I spoke with her. I see and hear her
Yes.
heart. I believe in what she believes in. I want this. And all of us coming together and just creating a movement, not just around Nichelle Henderson becoming the state superintendent of public instruction, but joining Nichelle Henderson in the reimagining of education, a reimagining of the systems that have not benefited all.
I
And I
love
look
this.
forward to
Thank you
meeting
so much.
everyone. No, thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it. Every opportunity that I have to talk to people and people to hear my voice gets me one step closer to becoming the state superintendent.
Well, I can't wait to meet you in person.
Same here. Same here.
If you have the opportunity to meet Nichelle as she is making her way through the 58 counties of California, I highly encourage you to. She's very personable, she's knowledgeable, she has a background in education, so she knows what she's talking about from true experience. Make sure that you are getting involved when it comes to education. Your children deserve it. My children deserve it. We all deserve it because it really affects each and every one of our futures, not just our children's, but the workforce overall. I encourage you to go research more about Nichelle, learn about her, about the other candidates that you'll be voting for coming up, and remember to go beyond the campaign.